Randy felt the world tilting beneath him from the moment he realized their secret was slipping through cracks he thought he had sealed. He stood in the dimness of his apartment, staring at the scattered pieces of evidence he had gathered, each one a reminder of the plan he and Hayley had crafted with ruthless precision, now turning into the very thing threatening to destroy them both. He had once believed their shared fear of Bill, their shared hatred, and their shared desperation would bind them tightly enough to execute the one thing neither dared attempt alone. But fear was a fragile cement. When pressure mounted, it crumbled. And now, the fracture lines were spreading fast. Hayley felt the walls closing around her too, but in a different way. Her mind replayed every step she and Randy had taken, every reckless corner they cut, every moment she convinced herself the plan was necessary. Bill had pushed them to the limits of their humanity, trapping them in cycles of manipulation and fear, and she had believed that removing him was the only way out. Yet as the conspiracy unraveled, she found herself trapped again. Not by Bill this time, but by Randy, by the consequences of her choices, and by the suffocating realization that whatever came next would be far darker than anything she had imagined. Randy seethed with anger at Hayley's naivety, as he called it in his thoughts, though he knew deep down he shared the blame. He had trusted her to stay quiet, to be cautious, to keep her nerves from revealing cracks. But lately she had become jumpy, restless, and unpredictable. She had made small errors. Tiny ones, yes, but in their situation, even dust could become a detonator. A misplaced document. A discarded receipt. A footprint leading somewhere it shouldn't have. He knew investigators, when they came, didn't need full confessions, they needed patterns. And Hayley was creating patterns he couldn't erase. Hayley felt Randy's resentment like a storm gathering just beyond her line of sight. She sensed his distrust in the way he avoided her, in the way he examined her reactions, in the way his silence became heavier than any accusation. She understood his anger, but she also felt her own boiling beneath the surface. The plan had been his idea. She had followed him out of fear and necessity, not ambition. She had never wanted to go as far as he insisted. And now that they were exposed, he behaved as if she alone had loosened the threads. Her resentment grew with each passing day, fueled by the haunting suspicion that Randy might try to protect himself at her expense. The revelation that their plan to kill Bill had leaked into the wrong hands hit them both with suffocating force. It began with small rumors in the office, nothing explicit, just a sense of whispers shifting direction when either of them entered a room. Then came the strange looks from people who once ignored them, as if they sensed the scent of guilt clinging to their clothes. And finally, the unmistakable ripple of fear when Bill's name was mentioned, fear that did not come from Bill himself, but from what people believed was coming next. Randy's anger collided with his panic. He began tracing the leak obsessively, convinced someone had overheard something at the worst possible moment. He thought back to the night when he and Hayley had gone over the details in the garage, believing the concrete walls and humming ventilation would drown out their words. But even there had been shadows he could not account for. A work badge left on a bench. A security camera he thought was turned off. He imagined someone standing just beyond his sight, listening, absorbing every detail, and quietly preparing to use it. Hayley's dread manifested differently. She became consumed with the idea that someone close to Bill had been watching them, someone who knew how Bill operated and recognized the shifts in Randy and Hayley's behavior. She revisited every corridor she had walked, every closet she had paused in, every file she had touched. She wondered if Bill himself had sensed the plot. He was not a man easily fooled. His intuition about threats was legendary, and she had been foolish to assume he wouldn't notice two of his subordinates behaving like prey that suddenly decided to bare its teeth. Randy's distrust of Hayley grew as his paranoia deepened. He sensed she was hiding something, some detail she had not shared, some mistake she had made, something that could have set this unraveling in motion. The possibility that she had spoken to someone terrified him. He imagined her cornered in the hallway, breaking down, confessing pieces of the truth in a panic. He imagined her being manipulated by someone promising protection. The idea sickened him, but it also sparked a darker thought: if she became a liability, he would have to choose between loyalty and survival. Hayley, on the other hand, began to fear that Randy might eliminate her in an attempt to escape the consequences alone. She saw the coldness in his eyes when he looked at her. She felt the distance widening as he analyzed every word she said, every breath she took. She remembered the way he had spoken of Bill's ruthlessness when they planned the murder, how he admired certain aspects of Bill's brutal efficiency. Hayley began to see a reflection of Bill's cruelty inside Randy, a willingness to sacrifice anyone who threatened his safety. She wondered whether staying close to Randy was more dangerous than facing Bill himself. The more they drifted apart, the more the pressure mounted. Evidence seemed to appear everywhere, as if the walls themselves were turning against them. A note slipped under Randy's door. A flash drive left anonymously on Hayley's desk. Files being accessed without authorization. Their names appearing in places that made no sense. Each new sign pushed them further into fear, twisting their minds into knots. Neither could determine if they were being hunted by Bill, framed by a third party, or destroying one another through paranoid assumptions. Randy's rage eventually swallowed him whole. He began to believe he could still take control if he acted decisively. He convinced himself that if he found who leaked the information, he could silence them before the truth spread further. He started watching colleagues closely, following them after work, digging into their personal lives. He grew reckless, losing sight of the real enemy while creating new ones in every direction. In his desperation, he repeated the same error that had doomed him before, assuming the danger existed outside, rather than within himself. Hayley's turmoil took a different path. She retreated into herself, replaying every moment with Randy and Bill, trying to find meaning. She questioned her own sanity, her own morality, her own role in this spiraling chaos. She wondered if she had crossed an invisible boundary long before the murder plan was made, a boundary that sealed her fate regardless of what she chose next. Her fear morphed into frustration, then anger, then a numb resignation. She no longer cared about escaping, she cared only about understanding how everything had gone so catastrophically wrong. Meanwhile, the shadow of Bill loomed over them both. Even without direct involvement, his presence shaped their terror. The thought of him discovering their plot was enough to paralyze them. Bill was known for his ability to destroy careers, reputations, and lives without leaving a trace. Randy imagined Bill waiting patiently, collecting evidence with chilling precision. Hayley imagined him already knowing everything, watching them tear each other apart before he moved in for the final blow. As days passed, the tension between Randy and Hayley reached a breaking point. Their paranoia fed on itself. Each suspected the other of planning a betrayal. Each prepared for the possibility of being turned on. They no longer spoke or met, they circled one another like predators forced into the same shrinking territory. Every misstep seemed deliberate. Every silence felt like a trap. Every movement echoed with the weight of their mutual destruction. Then came the moment when their fears collided in the most catastrophic way. Randy discovered a file left in his mailbox. A file containing surveillance images of him and Hayley in the garage where their plan was discussed. The timestamp confirmed everything: someone had been watching them from the beginning. Randy's fury ignited into something violent and uncontrolled. He believed Hayley was responsible for the leak, convinced she had been compromised and had led their enemies directly to him. Hayley, at the same time, found in her locker a set of documents detailing financial transactions tied to Randy. Transactions that could place the entire blame on him. The implication was unmistakable. Someone wanted her to believe Randy was turning against her, preparing to hand her over as the mastermind. Panic overwhelmed her. She no longer saw Randy as a partner, she saw him as a threat capable of destroying her to save himself. The two spiraled into a psychological war driven by fear, fury, and desperation. Randy stalked the corridors at night, driven by the belief that Hayley was plotting against him. Hayley avoided every place she thought Randy might appear, convinced he was unstable enough to eliminate her. Their shared guilt, once a bond, became a corrosive force ripping them apart molecule by molecule. As the pressure reached its peak, they both realized, too late, the cruel truth: the leak exposing their murder plan had not come from either of them. It had been orchestrated by someone else entirely, someone who had been manipulating them from the moment they decided to kill Bill. Someone who benefited from their collapse. Someone who wanted them destroyed before they ever realized whose game they were playing. But by the time this truth began to surface, Randy and Hayley were already too far gone, broken, cornered, consumed by paranoia and rage, and trapped in a nightmare they had built with their own hands. The betrayal they feared from each other became the betrayal they inflicted upon themselves. And as the walls closed in for the final time, neither could remember the moment their intentions shifted from survival to enmity. The line between victim and villain had blurred beyond recognition. In the end, they had never needed Bill to destroy them. They had done that all on their own.